to allow the parent to listen in. Then we have the cable from the Tonie Box. Then we have the other half of the cable from the AudioLink XT, which streams to the child's Sonnet 3. Same setup works with earlier Sonnets and the AudioLink. So I hope you've grabbed that screenshot there, and I recommend this because it's a really fun way of families practicing at home. Here's some examples of content that you can consider creating and uploading into the audio player. So I've created a recording of me reading through the My House, and then we have the slide deck for the My House that the family can look at the same time as listening to the recording. So we also recommend a mixture of passive auditory training. So this is when the child is streaming direct to processor. Lots and lots of content available online. For example, here we've got an app with nursery rhymes. Love that. One of the ones I love is famous books that are read by actors. They're fantastic. Find that online, or watching their favourite cartoon. Important to monitor progress for children. Monitor a number of measurements. So we really want to look at the wear time. That's an important data to keep track of. Looking at the development of listening skills. I'm going to give you a tool for that. Do monitor holistically speech, language, and literacy skill development. And depending on the age of the child, we're not going to be measuring speech perception CI alone with a toddler, but when they're older, we can certainly do that. And listening in noise. So here's the tool that we can share with you for monitoring progress, specifically made a guide to cochlear implant rehabilitation for children with single-side deafness. It's got some checklists for skill development that you can work your way through. And it also has pages of activities that you can incorporate into your practice. Other resources that you might like to use, important. We know wear time, well, for all children is important. For children using a cochlear implant for single-side deafness, it is critical. We want that wear time. We saw the study that showed at the 6-month mark is indicative of what's going to follow. So ideally, by the 6-month mark, we want that to be up around 8 to 10 hours a day. Really interestingly, that study that I showed you about the wear time, one of the things I keep in mind when I'm reading studies about SSD CI use is I'm looking for the brand of cochlear implant, and looks disappointingly, it's often not mentioned. We welcome any study that wants to present comparative data because we are confident. Anecdotally, here in Australia, clinicians are telling us that people who are receiving a Med-El cochlear implant for SSD, they are wearing their processor longer hours, both children and adults. So we want that data. It helps people make an informed decision if they are choosing a cochlear implant for single-side deafness. We do have a lot of resources to support wear time, but that may not be the reason that people are wearing their cochlear implant, their processor longer with Med-El. We think it's probably because it sounds better. The sound quality is more closely matched to their normal ear, which is why the wear time is longer. But here we've got this resource, how to keep a child's audio processor on, that you can share with families. And we've also got our new daily listening hero chart that helps families give positive reinforcement for audio processor use. So it's a collaborative chart. They discuss with the child what activities they're going to wear their audio processor for. So here they can stick those on. You're going to wear your audio processor for breakfast and playtime and family time and story time. And then when they've done that, they can choose a little icon that matches their audio processor to stick onto the chart. Cute behaviour reinforcement resource. We also have a great resource that's helpful for classrooms and clinics, 10 hearing tips for children with single-side deafness. Some really great tips there, and always good to put it up somewhere to remind people, all the people involved in the child's care. Some other resources we will put in the resource package. We've got our brochure from the binaural hearing series, single-side deafness and cochlear implant rehabilitation, and our sound localization, which has tips and information and activity ideas to help develop that sound localization skill. Lots of information today. Some key messages for you to think about as we wind up. I do encourage you all to consider quality of life as a really significant factor for people with single-side deafness. Monitoring that, including it in your candidacy evaluation, I think is really important. And all of your candidates and recipients will value the fact that you are considering them as a whole person. When it comes to rehabilitation, we know that streaming auditory training is essential to reach an optimal outcome for recipients using a cochlear implant for single-side deafness. Structuring that auditory training and individualising it is associated with optimal outcomes. Using a variety of materials for both children and adults is beneficial, and making rehab meaningful is critical. If you want more information on SSD, we've got a fabulous expert series on our professional blog, QR code sending you there. Some really great world experts there talking about tinnitus suppression and cochlear implants, about from Daisy Tavora-Vieira about mapping and rehabilitation, and hearing outcomes and quality of life from Meg Dillon. I used a lot of references and I referred to quite a few studies in today's webinar, and I'm happy to share these references with you. We'll put a couple of pages together for you. Here's my contact, but I think Donna has given you an email address that you can reach out to for more information. And what I'm going to do now is stop sharing my PowerPoint and take some questions maybe. Donna, we can't hear you. Am I going to the chat for the questions? Okay, we'll give you a minute. We'll give Donna a minute. Oh, I can see, while you're doing that, Donna, I'm going
there we are.
Oh,
no, we're
good,
there.
good. Okay.
And it wasn't allowing me to unmute myself, but Eros has figured that out for me. Thank you,
Okay,
Eros. Good. Rebecca, that was fabulous. Gosh, so much information.
There was a lot. And look, I did cut some out too. I have a lot to say on this topic.
Yeah. Super. Okay, so we got lots of questions. So I'm going to, in the last few minutes, ask if you'd stay online to answer some of those. There was interest in the hearing loss quality of life resource. People asked how to get that. So I have put the rehabilitation generic email address in the chat also. And as we said, it will be on the trailer after this webinar. So that's rehabilitation@hearlife.world.
Can I just mention something about that hearing loss quality of life? I love it, and I'm glad that there's interest in it, because I really think this topic deserves a lot more attention. There are two versions of this same resource. One is better suited if you're going to hand it over in a hard copy, and one is better suited if you want to email it digitally, because it's all set up for online completion. So get both copies, because you probably find a use for both.
Yep, super. Thank you. One of the questions was, um, at what point post-implant would you recommend administering that?
Uh, Look, there, from studies I can see, there are changes as early as 3 months post, but maybe you want to wait until 6 months. But hey, experiment. That will be an interesting topic. How soon after cochlear implant do you see changes in quality of life? I love that
Mm.
idea.
Okay, super. Now, I think there's been a little bit of, or if you could just clarify for us a little bit more, in the video that you showed us,
Mhm.
can you tell us what the CI recipient was listening to?
Okay. She was listening to my speech through her audio processor. I know it didn't look like because she was so good, right? But remember, this was her second CI. So she'd had
Yeah.
some auditory training with her first CI. This
Mm-hmm.
was her Medel cochlear implant, and she just took off running. Not every first session will look like that.
No, no,
Most,
no.
most, most will not. So
So
I had
she's
phoned her. So we both turned our computer sound off and I phoned her, and the only thing she was listening to was the phone call directly streamed to her processor.
okay, got it. So why at times did you prompt her to turn the
Mm,
computer sound on as well?
okay, so really, she was understanding me beautifully, and I probably didn't need those. But for a person very new to listening with a cochlear implant, remember, they're only hearing my speech through the phone. They're very nervous and anxious. This is very new. I just want to make sure that she can understand any instructions and support the listening. So I do that when I do any remote session. I've got a number of little signs that I will hold up. And if I see a person looking anxious, I will support the language with some written content.
Okay, yep, yep. I hope that makes that clear for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Now there was a question about would you recommend direct audio input for children? I think you clearly answered that
Yes.
by saying yes, you would. Um, so tell us, would you then, if the person had a bone conducting device such as an adhere, would you recommend the same thing?
Um, no, it's not going to make any difference. We're streaming to develop the auditory pathway on the deaf ear.
Right.
So an ad here doesn't matter because it's never going to develop the auditory pathway on the deaf ear. It's only ever going to transfer to the good ear.
Okay. Thank you. So, so a quick question about schooling.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend, and I think you did answer this in a way, it was a question from before the webinar, would you recommend that a child was implanted before they start school? Or should we
Uh,
wait until they're established at school before
mm,
we go ahead with an implant?
Look, my strong, strong instinct is that the earlier the better. So I really don't understand this difference that it's presenting in different countries, where some countries are
Mm.
saying the child must be minimum of 5. Uh, I I know I'm Australian, but I really do believe that science backs what we do here in Australia, which is implant young. We know that the auditory cortex has a window, a critical window, and that's up to the age of 7. So some will say, oh, if we implant at 5, that's early enough. I don't think it is. We are missing years where we could be developing that auditory pathway.
Okay, now this might be a too big a question for now, but if you could just summarize
Mm.
it for us, because I think it summarizes lots of things. If you're sitting with a parent and you're going to do counseling on getting a CI for their child or an adult with SSD, what would you say to them are the main benefits?
Um, so I guess they're different for
Yeah,
families
yeah.
and so let's talk about families. Um, I guess knowing the research that shows that children with single side deafness struggle at school. 41%, big number, will fail a grade at school.